All right. Hello, hello. Welcome everybody. Come on into the show. So, as we just put that slide up there, hey Nancy, Happy
Hey,
New Year.
Happy New Year.
We're getting 2023 started off big time.
hmm
Big time. So, on December 19th, the North Carolina Department of Instruction was served with a lawsuit that was brought by Alliance Defending Freedom, one of the most venerable public interest law firms in the country, on behalf of a teacher by the name of David Phillips, who was wrongfully terminated um, from the governor's school, which is under the auspices and the direct control of the DPI. So that happened on December 19th. And then let's go to December 28th. And we will take it from there. And I'm going to tell you guys that Nancy and I have met with both the ADF, and we've also met with Mr. or Professor Phillips, Dr. Phillips, actually, who is the defendant or the plaintiff, excuse me, in this lawsuit. So full disclosure there. So a lot of the things we're talking about are from really our firsthand knowledge about the plaintiff and kind of a little bit of the background that's available. We're not going to divulge anything certainly pertinent to the lawsuit, but we're going to get into it tonight. We're going to get into it tonight. All right. So, the professor claims that he was fired for critical race theory. It was actually more than that, Nancy.
hmm
What was going on there? I mean, he was really bullied and
hmm
harassed.
Yeah, I think it was more than just the criticizing critical race theory, or that's not exactly the right context, but he was fired directly after a series of optional, not even mandatory, but optional seminars. And these seminars discuss things including The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt and viewpoint diversity. They discussed the cancellation of professors across the country for various reasons and various conservative-ish viewpoints. Brett Weinstein, other kind of woke news that has been in the news for the past year and a half, 2 years. So
Well,
certainly relevant to a lecture for the times we live in. All cited, all heavily referenced. And after, I guess, the third lecture in the series, which he'd given before, and he also got permission to do, which he didn't have to do. He didn't have to get permission, but he did. After a bunch of really aggressive, harassing questions, which he stayed to try to answer and have an open discussion about, and all of that stuff coming from not just students, but from staff, which is kind of surprising and not the usual thing there, apparently. He was fired the next day without reason. So it wasn't just criticizing critical race theory is kind of the headline, but it was more than that. Yeah.
So it's workplace harassment. So let's back up a little bit. Governor's School is a preeminent advanced scholars program. It's a 4-week residency program for, I believe it is high schoolers. So it's really there to kind of simulate a collegiate atmosphere. They call themselves professors. It's the whole shebang, and it is absolutely for advanced students, be they from Robeson County or Columbus County or Martin County or all over. So you've got small town students, you've got, metropolitan students, you've really got a mix. And the thing is that they are truly a captive audience. So what Nancy's describing and what the lawsuit describes is something that the EEOC, so the Equal Rights Commission, defines as workplace harassment. So what happened was not only were the students disrespecting, and I say that's a minimum that the students were doing. The other professors were actually encouraging students to pile on and do a group harassment situation. And the comments are this chyron that I have going on down here, that he was a white, conservative Christian male. That's not from me. That's actually the harassment. That's the harassment that came out of the mouths of the folks harassing him. He was harassed specifically for those qualities that according to not only Professor Phillips here, but also according to other affidavits. Okay, so this is going on, and as I intimated before, on the 28th, here comes a letter to the General Assembly from Catherine Truitt at the same time that North State Journal, okay, publishes 2 different pieces on her at the same time. So here, Nancy, as you pointed out before, how many days? 10 days, 11 days went by. North State Journal, which calls themselves a conservative outlet, doesn't report about a landmark watershed lawsuit here. They keep mum, and only when Catherine Truitt comes out and says, hey, let me get my side out there, right? Let me tell you about this terrible professor. She comes out with this 6-paragraph screed, basically, that has a lot of things in there that we will discuss. But again, I mean, North State Journal and AP Dillon specifically have been the cleanup crew for Catherine Truitt since she started, second only to Terry Stoops formerly from the Locke Foundation. And we found out what was undergirding that. And it was that he was offered employment by Catherine Truitt. So naturally, he spent several months making her look good in the media, which I believe is duplicitous to say the least. And then he was hired. But I digress. But we're going to go over, Nancy, what you've put together, the claims bit by bit on Catherine Truitt's accusations. But here's the overview, you guys. We have the highest sitting educational officer in the state calling this teacher a racist. And what she is doing is trying to discourage other conservative, evangelical teachers who have been bullied and wrongfully terminated. That's what this is. She is demonizing to the General Assembly and to the public this man's character. And I can tell you what, she better have the evidence to back it up. Seems like a second good lawsuit to me.
Yeah, I was very surprised upon reading that letter, how strong it was, especially because she wasn't named in the suit, albeit, she is in charge of everything. So obviously she's got responsibility there.
She personalized it.
Yeah. And, the first half of the letter was about her, which, she didn't even mention this teacher until, towards the second half of the letter, which I found kind of personally interesting. And there seemed to be a lot of contradictions, or at least a few major ones, that I would question if I were editing the letter. So,
yeah, I don't think her legal team, guys, I think Nancy and I have kind of kicked around some theories. I think her legal team was out on vacation, and she read the lawsuit, or more likely, knowing Catherine Truitt, and we'll put up some examples. She was like, wow, how dare somebody, criticize me, when in fact someone is upset about being wrongfully fired. And she just kind of concocted this on her own, perhaps with Andrea Dillon or Jamie Falconberry, who is her right-hand man in the DPI, but did it as a mechanism to, as this Facebook user said, not only deflect personal responsibility, which she does later on, right, but to discourage others from coming forward.
Yeah, it definitely does that. I mean, I would be, after this one, it's like, why would any teacher go to her with anything? Because
this is bad. No matter if you're on the right or the left. We would be.
I don't quite understand it. I don't quite understand why it's so. I mean, she's basically taking the side of a leftist, large, overfunded bureaucracy, against the individual, brave, standing up to power, conservative-minded teacher.
We expect the left. Yeah, we expect this from the left.
Yeah, we would expect from the left. So I can understand, she is in charge of the DPI, so she has to come out, but at the same time, it was the things she said were so strong and so much, it didn't make sense to me. But
we expect to hear these arguments in court. We do not expect for these type of arguments and claims to be made ahead of court. And just so you know, this professor asked several times, this is all in writing. Number one, he had, David Phillips had exemplary reviews every single year, 13 years the man taught there, exemplary reviews, raves from students. When he was dismissed, it was immediately following a lecture where he'd been bullied for being a white evangelical Christian, all right, and had been taken to task on that, male. He asked several times, I think, Nancy, at least 3 in writing, why am I being fired?
No, it's never been consistent. Originally, when he was originally fired in the office the next day, he asked for a reason and he wasn't given one. They wouldn't give him one, and he had to leave same day without even a word to his students or anything. I mean, it was like
pack your
no transition, no anything. And he couldn't get a reason. And I think at some point they said something generic, like the NCDPI said something generic, like, well, we're taking the English department in a different direction or something like that, like very generic that wouldn't explain why you're suddenly fired, day of, and you have to leave the campus within 20 minutes. And then
so that means
all of a sudden now it's changing to, in this letter, instead of the earlier reason that they had to, just pull teeth to get from the NCDPI, which was the changing direction of the English department at Governor's School, is now he's made racial slurs and all of this stuff. So even their story isn't consistent, which is...
Well, it suggests this. This isn't true. We know Phillips. That means we're expected to believe that there is zero due process. Teachers, how would you like this? Educators, how would you like this? How would you like it if just you can be fired like that? You ask for an explanation, absolutely none is given. And then in the court of public opinion, the reason for your firing will be gotten out there. How would you like zero due process? At no time was Phillips ever confronted with any allegations of racism and had the opportunity or not to defend himself. So, this is just so disturbing on so many levels. So
he even voluntarily went to the offices of the site director after the lecture the next morning to try to talk to him preventatively, to be like, hey, this was uncomfortable and odd, and there was a lot of aggression, and he couldn't find him. So it wasn't like he was even trying to hide the fact that there was a controversy from giving a common sense seminar.
So he was the victim.
but then he was
for being a white Christian conservative male, and the bullies, the tormentors in there, they said so.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So let's continue. We're going to go by this one by one. Yeah, we would expect a Republican superintendent to actually defend a Republican or a conservative Christian. We would expect that. Again, as we keep telling you guys, we have a radical Marxist. I would any day of the week rather have a Democrat that tells the truth versus a lying, duplicitous Republican. And that's exactly what we have here. Because if someone's telling the truth, right, you can work with them on some level, right? You may not agree with almost anything they're doing, but at least you can plan, predict, etc. This is bad. Yeah. Truth is bad. All right. Claim number 1.
Wait. Can you just quick go back? I'm sorry to interrupt. Just quick go back to the last slide, because I just want to point something out. So she made very specific accusations in the letter, including the fact that he, quote unquote, supposedly used racial slurs. I just want to point out, when I read this, I was thinking, so this was an optional seminar. It was not mandatory. It was not part of the area 1, 2, 3 mandatory classes. It was totally optional. So if the students were at this optional seminar and were made uncomfortable to the point because of racial slurs, which he didn't make, but they're claiming he did. Why didn't they leave? Why did they stay there? Why wouldn't you walk out at that point? And
you would have a lot of witnesses that day. They would have taken to social media. I'm telling you right now.
It would have been recorded or something on cell phones.
As well they should. By the way, anyone making racist statements, exposure and sunlight on that.
Right.
You've got to do that.
Like pull out the cell phone and record it and walk out and tell people, like, absolutely. But he didn't. So there's no, the context doesn't make sense. The one thing in the lawsuit they talk about, which could lead to someone claiming racial slurs that I saw, was that he talked about a USC professor getting fired because he was using a Chinese word that sounded like an American racial slur.
Yeah, but
he got permission to play that video. So that's the only thing, the only connection possible I could see.
That's reaching. That wasn't cited. That's ephemeral to this. So, all right. So let's go and talk about the claims. I have been vehemently against the teaching of topics characterized by CRT in the classroom. For instance, the demonization of white Christian conservative males, right? This is untrue. We've been pointing it out for 2 years. We'll point it out again. But I think this is illustrative. This is a recent illustration of how that is not a lie, but a damn lie. Nancy not only did a record request from the DPI, and you do not understand what it is like being Sloan Rockmuth or Nancy Anderson trying to get documents from the DPI. We've got a lawyer and we have to always follow up, right? But this is just a recent example. So this comes from Catherine Truitt. This is June 1st. Catherine Truitt is sending this Martin lady. She is the go-between between the State Board of Ed and the DPI.
Yeah, she organizes the meetings.
Yeah. So Truitt is saying, hey, this framework, this equity framework, this is the bee's knees, the cat's meow, the skunk's pajamas, whatever. You've got to go to this. And then Martin, who is an absolute radical, we're going to expose that later, goes, well, I'm very familiar with this framework, and I focused on changing system conditions in Petersburg, Virginia, as a DEI strategy when I was there, which is probably why she was fired within a year. Anyway, also, DPI is already doing a version, and wow, I am so stoked to do this. Here's the deal. Truitt writes back. This is such great news. I mean, there is good news, then there's such good news. It's in that category. Please share, add commentary. Now, let me show you about, and it's just a cursory introduction of the National Equity Framework. Okay. What you're looking at is from their resource page. A new world order is taken, and you can't see this, but this is actually from Malcolm X. A quote from Malcolm X. This is very radical stuff. The first thing you should look at here, queer and trans theory, true history, which is CRT, student voices, which is teaching them to protest,
restorative justice.
Yeah, we demand a seat at the table.
Restorative counsel. It sounds rather CCP-ish.
Yes, in other words, struggle sessions.
Yeah.
I mean, they're teaching Black Lives Matter. So this is from June. Truitt is recommending this. And she goes back and she says, let's just go back. I have been vehemently against teaching topics characterized by CRT in our classrooms. That is a lie.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's no way. And that link that she shares is directly from this National Equity Project website. And the actual framework printout has all of the words on it, like systemic oppression and liberation and all of this stuff. So at one point, I think Sloan, when I first met her, she told me, and I was asking her telling her in person, I was concerned about the meaning of equity and how it has socialist connotations and things like that. She said, well, we don't use the activist definition. Well, every picture on National Equity Project's website is about activism, pretty much, or 90% of them are. So if she's taking a framework directly from this website to be used in a working session,
Yes,
a model for the equity for the School Board of Education,
she did.
this would be the activist definition for sure.
Correct. Right. Claim number 2. It's my predecessor's fault. Now, I want to introduce you guys to her predecessor here. She has said this so many times. She asked us all to vote for her because she wanted to make change, right? She wanted to do the right thing. She sold us down the river of belief here of deceit. All right. But now she's saying, hey, my predecessor, Mark Johnson, did it. Well, I can tell you about Mark Johnson. Actually, he works for Ted Budd now. And he actually took James Ford, who is a radical left school board member on the State Board of Ed. He took him to task for tweeting about white supremacy. So you can see that. State Superintendent Mark Johnson is questioning James Ford's ability to serve on the State School Board of Education following a tweet by him that links white moderates with white supremacy. So Mark Johnson, Mark Johnson would never have allowed this. He would never have condoned this. He did not put this program into place. This is also, I have to call that a lie. I might even call that a whopper. That's It's hard to tell with her because there's so many. Okay, so the next one. Let's see. Hang on.
Well, I'd also like to say with the predecessor thing,
it's getting old.
Well, yeah, she's already used it several times before. She put in Sneha Shackletrain, or she switched to having her in charge of the governor's school in 2021 before that session where the teacher was fired. So it was her choice who was overseeing all of this when it was happening and okayed the firing of the teacher. Sneha Shackletrain was involved in the disastrous social studies standards. She was on that committee. She also is the wife to the top education advisor to Governor Truitt, and she's a very public
Cooper. But there's very little.
Sorry, Governor Cooper. That's sorry. Ahead of myself.
Cooper and Catherine Truitt are indistinguishable in their views.
Sorry. And she's also been very vocal on social media about her very progressive views, consistently supporting Southern Poverty Law Center, consistently tweets about white privilege, consistently supports James Ford and his creed and anti-racist programs. So, I mean, this is not someone who's moderate or, tries to be objective. This is, this is another lefty that she put in charge of a school. So who tweets the same things that the school is teaching, basically the white privilege and oppression. So why would a teacher come to you to complain if you're putting these people in charge? It's just another like, what? This doesn't make any sense.
Well, in the letter, I forgot to mention this. She laments that the teacher, this fired professor, did not come to her. Why didn't he come to me, etc.? He knows that I'm conservative, etc. Number one, he followed the chain of command. I mean, that's what it's there for. He did it. He did what he's supposed to do. Why didn't he come to you? He didn't trust you. That's my guess. Can't speak for him, but
when she put the person in charge, you fired him, and I mean, what is he supposed to do? Yeah. Blaming him again. It's blaming the victim.
Blaming the victim, and she does it. I'm going to go over this.
It's unnecessary.
I've cleaned up the governor's school, and I have safeguards in place. June 1st, she wants the National Equity Project. June 1st of this year, several months ago, she wants the National Equity Framework to be instituted and educators to be educated on it. So she did that June 1st. How the hell did she clean up the governor's school?
I haven't seen any evidence of it. And I mentioned before, so the task force showed the curriculum, which was given separately to No Left Turn in Education by a separate entity, not this teacher. Total separate, but aligns, with his story. It was included in the task force report. She was at the press conference. It was cited by Berger in his proposition for HB 324. She was there. And I don't know where these safeguards are. Like, I haven't seen minutes from any meetings talking about them. I was on the Zoom call for the first Governor's School Board of Directors business meeting after that task force on September 13th, I believe, 2021. Recorded the whole thing. Sneha Shackle-Train was there. David Segal was there. No Truitt, none of Truitt's, no Jamie Falconberry, none of her inner sanctum. And there was zero discussion for the whole 2.5 hours or however long that meeting was of any of the curriculum problems that showed up in the task force report. So I'd really love to know why the first major meeting for the Governor's School leaders and board of directors after that press conference in the summer of 2021, there was zero discussion. And how does that fit with putting all these safeguards in place? And where is the documentation of what these safeguards are?
Yeah, no, this is all bunk. And I'm going to show you. Here's Phil Berger. What we're talking about here is Phil Berger specifically cited, specifically that the Governor's School problem. And I believe he did it while Catherine Truitt was there. Is that?
I think
so. Remember? Okay.
I thought she was in the background. Fact check me on it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm sure there's going to be at least one person that will. Yeah. Okay. So GOP are abusing, etc. Mark Robinson, and then the gender unicorn is here. Mark Robinson pointed out the Governor's School problem, Phil Berger. So you're talking about, for us, for Republicans, the top of the figureheads of our party,
right?
Leaders of our party pointed this out repeatedly. So there's no sticking your head in the sand. That was August of 2021. June of 2022, she's recommending this thing. So we're really disputing the claim that happened. But look, this attacking the victim that we're talking about, this is nothing new for Truitt. We're going to go back in our little time machine here and give you just a couple of examples. So Nancy, you and I reported this. This is May 21st, 2021. And I came across a teacher training that was done out of the DPI to teachers all over the state, was done via Zoom. It was CRT on methamphetamine and steroids. It was awful. Awful. So we reported on that, etc. And of course, it caused quite a bit of consternation for Republican voters because they had just voted for Truitt and given her their trust. So one of those voters wrote her, this was 4 days after this story came out, and she said, "Hey, Truitt, what's going on? I hear that the DPI is doing this training." Well, what she did is she blamed me, and she blamed the journalist on this, Savannah Pointer, for being fake journalists who are being paid six-figure salaries. My God, I wish, to stir up controversy, to energize the base of our party. That's what she said in March. So I guess I'm like, didn't even mention you at this point, but I guess I'm like David Phillips trying to stir up the base, and I guess Phil Berger was trying to stir up the base, and Mark Robinson was trying to stir up the base, and everyone has pointed out the problems that are right under her nose. And then she followed up by saying, "I urge you again to stand against fake journalism that doesn't bother to share the whole story and plays loose with the facts." So she's been doing this for a while. I'm going to show another one. The funny thing is that we linked directly to the videos and showed 17 different screenshots on that story, which is still up. So if people were energized by seeing CRT, they saw it directly from the source. They saw it directly from the source. And then I think this one you'll remember. I was sitting here minding my own business back May 31st, 2021, Memorial Day weekend, just chilling out. I get a phone call from Nancy. Remember this? Do you believe what's going to be at the State Board of Education meeting for approval? Da, 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 da. And we saw that, my God, this is a woman who has just wrote that email and just said, I am going to stand against CRT, not on my watch, not going to happen, da, da, da. She's approving tens of millions of dollars for social emotional learning. She's seeking more of it. And we know that that has critical race theory in it and gender ideology. So we put out a petition. And here comes Jamie Falkenberry, okay, one of the flying monkeys at the DPI. Used to work for Dan Forrest, who I love. But anyway, he comes and he says, this is fake journalism. We're a fringe group. I urge you not to believe this. By the way, we pointed out in this petition, we're like, hey, they're doing very radical surveys called panorama surveys. And he's saying this is priceless. He's sitting here and saying, these are liars. You cannot believe them. And we are not doing surveys. What does he do? See this little thing right there, guys? He actually attaches the panorama survey that came out of Pitt County. He attached that there. He sent it to all the General Assembly members. And that got us invited to talk to 8 or 9 different senators at the time who said, wow, girls, great work. You got the DPI to actually send around these surveys. We saw the surveys for the first time. This is horrible stuff. And I think that was really what pushed Phil Berger to push so hard on this anti-CRT bill.
Yeah, well, it's been a consistent pattern where you bring up an issue and she just attacks you and says that you ask questions like, why is this person in charge when they're saying this and that? And you're against CRT but you're placing this. Oh, you must be for cancel culture. You must be, if we don't listen to
liar.
No, I'm just saying, like,
paid troublemakers.
How can you safeguard a program against CRT when you're putting a CRT activist in charge of that program? Unless you're watching every single thing, every single minute of that day. It's like, if your kids say they want to have a party and you keep saying no, and they're like, well, I want to have a party, and you say no, and then you go away for the weekend, they end up having a party and you come back and like chastise them. What do you think is going to happen? Like they've been telling you. So, I mean, this constant blaming of the victim and
blaming the predecessor, blaming the victim, blaming the messenger.
And then, blaming the messenger.
Blaming.
And then, the other contradiction is with the safeguards is, she says in her letter, I've worked really hard for years to put all these safeguards in, which we have no documentation of, really. To put all these safeguards in and better define the jobs and all of this stuff. And I worked so hard and it's all safeguarded now. Okay, but how come then you're just learning now that this teacher was fired for supposed racial slurs? Yeah. Like if you spent a year going through all of the problems of governor's school, all of the stuff that went on there, all of the stuff you admit, happened under your predecessor in the letter, and you spent a year with all of the staff and everything safeguarding it, then how come Sneha Shackle-Train never said, hey, we had to send a teacher off same day, and just kick him out because of the horrible racial slurs he was saying?
Correct. That's a great point.
I don't get it. It
never came up in conversation. It was never a rebuttal. So what Catherine Truitt, make no mistake, she is, just let me summarize it again before I show you what's going on in governor's school. By the way, I mean, we've got between No Left Turn on Education and Education First Alliance, we've got at least a dozen parents who have come forward and said, this is rotten from the core for the last several years. So was it going on in the past? Probably. No one never said it wasn't. But to sit here and say, this guy's a racist, well, we expect that from the left. So what she's trying to do is put her finger in the dike of other teachers coming forward, not only on the right, but maybe on the left, teachers who are not having their religious beliefs respected, right? Teachers who are discriminated against for a variety of reasons. She's trying to come forward and get folks not to complain about it. Not on our watch. Not going to happen. So these are some of the things that come directly from the lawsuit. We're going to read them to you. This is no surprise. How long have we been talking about it? Right? This is what they're teaching. Racism is defined as anything that perpetuates an unequal distribution of privileges. In other words, equity, ding, 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 what we've been talking about, right? Racism can only be committed by white people. Well, that's preposterous. Black and brown, all folks are exhibiting those behaviors. And every time it's exhibited, it needs to be challenged. Any questioning of CRT concepts by a white person is an expression of white fragility, which functions as racism. I think Catherine Truitt just did that by actually calling him a racist, right? Any unequal outcomes are a result of systemic racism. Okay. People with certain characteristics, such as being, female, transgender, homosexual, non-Christian, is always oppressed. In other words, you're kind of damned if you're born in America being Black. Just no matter what. Teaching those sort of things is obviously very harmful. Let's see. Person who is white, heterosexual, able-bodied, male, cisgender, financially stable, Christian is a prince of privilege. They went around talking about being the
prince those slides
of privilege. We do. We actually have that presentation from the DPI, or from
the governor's school.
Yeah. From the governor's school. And then they fired this prince of privilege. Students with privileged characteristics are encouraged to recognize and confess their privilege to peers and teachers. Guys, I can't tell you this strongly enough. This is a captive audience. This is bringing students in for the first time ever, probably, away from their families. No one's there to defend them. And they're being asked or forced to go into struggle sessions where they have to denounce their immutable qualities, their family,
their religion,
right? Their religion, no matter what it is. Well, their Christianity, their values. And in this lawsuit, Phillips says, I'm standing up for the many students who have come to me, because again, this is a residency program, and they see, I'm just riffing here, they see in Phillips what they see at home, perhaps a father figure, strong values, and they are going to him and saying, I'm very uncomfortable. And so he's also standing up for these students. And we know that.
Yeah. I think when I read the lawsuit, I mean, that was one of the things I was happiest about seeing, was that he's not bringing the suit for himself. He's bringing it to expose and to stand up for all of those who are unable, for whatever reason, to come forward because they're scared and intimidated and they took that on in this lawsuit. And so my opinion after reading that December 28th letter from Catherine Truitt was her aggression towards Dr. Phillips is an aggression to all those students who came to him with their stories, with their uncomfortable experiences, to confide in someone when they're, probably a minority in terms of viewpoint on that campus, when they're away from their parents. And he's trying to bring this to attention. He tried to bring it to attention within the system for years, and no one would do anything about it. And
but they tolerated him. They tolerated him until Catherine Truitt promoted this Sneha Coltrane. When she promoted her, an obvious, in-your-face radical, this is what happened. This is a direct result. Oh, the gender plan. Oh, thank you, Facebook user. That was right on cue. Yes, I forgot to read the last one. Nancy, it's
oh yeah, gender is not binary.
Gender is not binary. It's on a spectrum. Well, we know that they were using the gender unicorn. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, I got slides from a separate source that didn't even know Dr. Phillips from the same same 21 program, from a mandatory course, not an optional course that you could walk out of or not attend, but from a mandatory course, area 3, which the whole thing was just slides of exactly that. Gender is a spectrum. Here's the gender unicorn. By the way, you're privileged if you're heterosexual. This is all the reasons you should feel guilty. All of these things. So it's a total separate source, and it confirms everything he says. And then the other thing is that
we have multiple corroborations, multiple.
Even Truitt says in her letter, she says something like, I didn't become aware of the problems at Governor School until the return in 2021 of Governor School after COVID, right? Well, so she knew. So she's in that statement admitting that there were problems at Governor School that were brought to her attention, too late for her to do anything about for 2021, according to her. So if she knew that there were a bunch of bad things going on that correlated with what this teacher is saying, how come she's being so aggressive towards the teacher when he's saying the same things that she knew apparently were warned about in early 2021, if you get my drift? Again, it doesn't make any sense. Like, he's not saying anything different from the problems pointed out earlier to her that she supposedly recognized that she had to go on a year-long tear to clean the situation up, right? So
look, yeah, absolutely. So Nancy, I mean, she could have said nothing, which most professionals would have said nothing. She could have said, I've heard about this and I'm going to conduct an investigation. We will not tolerate viewpoint discrimination. We will not tolerate discriminating against Christians or Muslims or Jews or any religion. And we will promote academic freedom in this institution. I will look into it. Could have said that. She didn't have to weigh in. She weighed in, blamed everybody, demonized Mark Johnson, which is the predecessor now working for Ted Budd. That's extremely unprofessional. Demonized David Phillips. I think she's going to have a lot to answer for in the courtroom. I mean, I'm no lawyer, of course, but this is a separate claim. This is outright defamation, unless she's got video proof, I would say, of Phillips engaging in this type of behavior. Her goose is cooked. She's trying to prevent the man from being in his profession. And I don't care what your views are. You should never have a sitting government official prejudice you without warrant in your profession.
Well, plus, if you have video of a professor at the most esteemed program the NCDPI runs for students making racial slurs, why wouldn't you show it to Catherine Truitt if you're in charge of that program? Yes. Why wouldn't she know about it until December? And also, why would you initially say that he was fired because you want to take the English department in a different direction, right? I mean, you would say because he was inappropriate with students and said things that we do not tolerate, right? You wouldn't say, well, we're just taking it into... So none of this makes any sense. The ADF asked for those records several times, or Dr. Phillips asked for those, made public records requests more than once, never received any type of report about his behavior, let alone saying anything questionable. All of his lectures were pre-approved anyway, which he didn't have to do. So yeah, I have a lot of questions after this letter. Exactly what she's looking at, where she's getting this information, when was it documented? If it was documented early, why wasn't it released to him in his request? Why wasn't it said early on? This letter just leads to more questions for me. I don't understand it.
Well, it does to the General Assembly as well. I've been talking to a few representatives who plan on bringing Truitt into their office and saying, put up or shut up. We want to see the evidence here. I mean, they're getting a lot of calls from their constituents. We know and understand how toxic these situations are already for, conservative Christians, whether they're, teaching and on the student side. We already know that. So constituents are not only hearing about this, they're hearing that a Republican is taking the side of the hard left without showing the evidence, and they are burning up the phones to their constituents. And we're going to make it even hotter. We're going to have an initiative where we want all of you guys to be calling your reps and bring Catherine Truitt in and say, where's your evidence? We're not going to allow you to tarnish the reputation of a good man. Conservative Christian teachers are already too hard to come by. How does this make it, how does this even increase any teachers being hired? I mean, this is terrible.
No. And yeah, he had very thorough, very appropriate lectures that touched on the topics of today, of things going on.
We've seen them.
And they were optional. They weren't even mandatory. So, it's just so backwards. It's so backwards. And we have a real problem here in North Carolina with our education system, and we can't trust leadership at all. And I really call upon any General Assembly members. They don't have to be of a particular party, just anyone interested in the strength of education, because he wasn't just talking conservative. It wasn't like he was preaching conservative Christian value. He was
never actually
about, free speech and viewpoint diversity and the controversies and all of that with several cited academic sources. So anyone, this really shouldn't even be political. Anyone who wants a strong education for the kids of North Carolina so that they can argue and debate whatever side they need to debate and form thinking skills should be on top of this letter and asking what the heck is going on here.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's no there's so many things wrong with this. There's no due process, viewpoint discrimination, etc. I mean, look, the left is always saying, oh, you want people fired for saying certain words. Oh, it's a speech code. It's a this or that. Well, now is their time to show that they're actually even-handed, and they're, they don't want people fired for these sort of things on either side. I haven't heard anyone come out, and unfortunately, I haven't heard enough people, who are conservative come out and defend this man. We are going to need your help in defending this man, his rights, and any teacher who gets fired for freedom of expression and is targeted for their religious status, be it anti-Semitism, which we've been talking about a lot lately. Anti-Christian bias is on the rise. We've got teachers, who practice Hinduism. Again, this is any and all, right? And I don't even think, Nancy, that he ever brought up his religion.
Well, I think he just brought it up when I was reading the lawsuit in the context of identity, when people were saying, oh, if you question white privilege, that's questioning their very identity or something like that. And he was saying, well, for example, I might be Christian conservative, but if you question Christian conservatism, I don't think that's questioning my identity, and I'll be happy to debate that with you. Like, I don't take that personally. It's a debate between two different.
He was teaching tolerance,
right? He was exactly teaching how to debate and how to carry on conversations between two ideologies that might be even diametrically opposed. So I think he brought it up in that context. But not inappropriately.
That lecture pissed them off the most. That was it.
They couldn't get him to back down. Yeah, they couldn't get him to cave to the struggle session. They basically brought their own struggle session. The TAs and some students basically brought their own struggle session to his optional lecture at the end, and tried to get him to kneel about his own personal beliefs, which was completely inappropriate.
Yeah. I mean, David Phillips is the kind of teacher that you would want, no matter what your religion, because he would defend you, no matter what your political viewpoint is, because he would defend you. And he did, and he had, no matter what your skin color. I can tell you. And the last thing I'm going to leave you guys with too is that talking about sexuality in this way with these schools that are a captive audience and they're going there as a resident, when you out a kid's sexuality before they are ready to do that, or compelling them to come forward with these things, it can be highly traumatic. We have heard from a family that has happened to at the governor's school. It was before the time that the kid was ready, and it made for a very highly uncomfortable situation. So again, kids from all sides are victimized by this when you're pulling this information out of them instead of your job is to impart knowledge.
Mhm.
That's what a teacher does.
Mhm.
But this pulling out personal items and having these therapy struggle sessions, it's very harmful stuff.
Mhm. Yep. Dr.
Very
Phillips
harmful.
is a very brave person, and yeah, we need to support him as much as possible because he is doing a very, very important action, and he's not doing it for himself. He's
That's
doing
right.
it to protect these kids and to bring a bunch of stuff to light that has been hidden for far too long.
Right. Right. So this is the first of or second of many conversations we're going to have. I suspect by next week, we're going to kick off a campaign that's going to raise awareness about this particular issue, because it's really a seminal case. It's going to be a very big case, but we're going to educate the legislators on really the facts of the case and make sure that Catherine Truitt will not be able to gaslight others and get them to, sever support for white male conservatives, in particular in the classroom, but of people of all
Yeah,
faiths, that are being attacked.
right.
So,
Exactly.
all right. Well, thank you. Had a wonderful evening. Thank
Yeah.
you. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I'm gonna put. I don't think you can see it. I literally, guys, had paint on my hands and fingernails.
That's a lot of furniture. A lot of furniture.
I've finished a lot of furniture, and I'm really wanting to brag about it over the last.
That was a crazy amount of furniture. I think I painted one small bookcase once, and I was like, okay, never again. You did like huge.
Well, I do it
furniture.
once a year for therapy, and so last year it was a bookcase, 7 pieces of furniture this year. So that tells you
That's insane.
how 2022 went for us, right? Needed a lot of furniture. And Nancy, what did you do? You, besides spending time with your family, you researched, and we have a lot to cover.
Yeah, I research and read books, and right now I'm reading the Whittaker Chambers autobiography called Witness. And Whittaker Chambers was part of the underground communist apparatus in Washington in the 30s, and he later renounced communism and came out and testified against the communists in the Alger his case in the 40s. So I'm reading his record of it, and it's pretty amazing stuff. He gets into the weeds kind of, but then periodically he has a brilliant page about communism and how it works and all of the underground secret stuff going on, and it would apply today. I mean, it's recommended.
Yeah. One of the best books I've read is Color of Communism. It's a very quick read about a Black American who was pressured into communism and took the bait and then came out of it and then was able to talk about it. But it was just like the BLM movement. It was incredible that it just sort of repeats itself, truly.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's the same. It really is. History rhymes. If it doesn't overtly repeat, it certainly rhymes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you. Have a great evening and happy 2023. And we're kicking it off big time.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.